We're returning from executive session by a motion made by Leslie Moriarty, seconded by Nisha Arora at 1:53. So we will now continue with our agenda for the request for budget adjustments. And the first one is BA1, the Board of, oops, I'm sorry.
I have a point of information. Do we need to make any motions on the agenda that's posted? For instance, I don't believe the BOE is coming. Do we need to remove that from the agenda?
We'll get to that number.
Okay. So we don't need a motion to change the agenda? Formally?
We've never done that.
Okay, just asking.
I just thought when we get down to that number.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just asking what the process is.
But I think it's, process. I think that's a good idea, but we've never done that. So we'll just keep on moving. But thank you, Laura. I appreciate that. I didn't, never even occurred to us ever before. So thank you. So anyway, our first item on the agenda is BA1 from the Board of Assessment Appeals for $2,000. It's an additional appropriation for temporary salaries. And this was requested by the chairman of the Board of Appeals because they expect, and Roland will help us with this, I think usually he speaks to these when we don't have anyone present. They expect, or Pete, maybe Pete, you're the one who's involved with the chairman of the Assessment Appeals, Mark Pruner, expect in a reval year that they'll have more appeals and therefore they need additional temporary help, is that?
I spoke to Mark recently, and he needs to hire 2 additional staff because of the number of appeals. He stated that he'll know officially how much he needs Friday. He'll know the number of appeals. They're probably a little bit less than what he expected. However, he did tell me that he was requesting 3,500, and I thought we were putting 3,500 in here. So if we could, regardless of any number we approve, we'll have an official number for Dan's agenda for Monday, and we'll have more background for the BET meeting, on Tuesday.
So actually, this is the first I've heard of that. When it was submitted, it was $1,500, and then it was increased when on the agenda.
He came up later in that, right after you left the other day, he came up around 3 or 4 and raised the number to 3,500.
Okay.
But you can vote, you can amend the number on Tuesday.
We can, so is there any discussion on this? Would we like to amend the amount?
I just want to confirm that based on the charter, the BET is the one who appropriates this money. It does not need to go to the RTM. Is that correct? Because it's below 5,000?
Correct.
It's under 5,000.
Up to 5,000, yes.
So would someone like to amend this to the amount that Peter Minarski has just advised us to? And then should we also, the amendment include approval, and is this a routine item? Routine item, everyone? Laura?
I mean, if we're going to know Friday the right number, I would suggest we approve the item as is, and then we can amend it at the full BET on Tuesday once we have the actual information.
Well, I mean, since he spoke to Pete after this was submitted, and we didn't learn of that until today, I would suggest that we at least, approve the 3,500. If he doesn't spend it, he won't spend it too. That's also an issue. But obviously, apparently on Friday, he will know because he'll know how many appeals have been filed. So I would suggest that we amend this to what he, at this point, thinks he might need, which is $3,500. It's a reasonable request by the Board of Appeals in a reval year. It's a big reval year.
What's sorry, I don't have the budget in front of me. What's their total budget? Something like 9,000, right?
I don't have the budget in front of me either.
I mean, I just would like to have the information, that's all.
Roland, can you please advise us what the budget for the BAA is for this year? I'm sorry?
That's the same as it's been in years that aren't.
$5,000?
9.
$9,000.
And those are for years that weren't reval years.
So, Leslie?
Now, make a motion to approve up to, approve the $3,500. We'll get the justification next week. And if they don't need the money, it'll be reduced next Tuesday, but I don't think we need to make their job more difficult.
So it's motion made by Leslie Moriarty, seconded by Nisha Arora. Is it fair to say this is a routine application for this amount of money? Are we voting on this?
Yes, I mean, I think it can be routine. I think if the dollar amount were to change, it would then revert to non-routine.
Right, exactly. Okay, so we'll make that a routine motion for $3,500 for the Board of Assessment Appeals. Those in favor? Those against?
I'm just abstaining.
Oh, you're abstaining. Okay, I'm
I'm
sorry.
abstaining just because I don't have the information, that's all.
Okay. So that vote is 3-0-1, and Laura abstained. Okay, good. So our next item here was placed on the agenda by Roland. We did not know if there would be any kind of request by the BOE for emergency funds for Central Middle School, and it's my understanding they aren't yet ready. Would anyone like to make a motion to remove this from our agenda, or don't normally do things like that? Just pass it. Okay, so withdrawn. So the application was withdrawn. Okay. The next item we have on our agenda is Parks and Recreation. So I know that we have had Joe Siciliano and Blaise Leviton and Ryan Chemnusky on our attendee list. Are they going to be joining us?
If you let them,
I'm sorry?
if you promote them.
Oh, are they physically not joining us today?
They're attendees.
Okay.
Good afternoon.
Hey, everybody.
Good afternoon. So you're not with us physically today?
We're upstairs at the moment. Ryan is in upstate Connecticut, and Joe is he made Roland aware that he had a 2:00 deposition with another case with the law department, so he may be in and out.
Okay, thank you. So this is a request for $150,000 for release of conditions for the field master plan design. So would you like to update us on what you presented, which is just, the approval of the money so far? I'm looking for the condition, which I don't see in this package, so I'll have to go to something else. I'm sorry? I'm sorry, I don't think I see it.
I've got it if you want me to share my screen, if that helps too. I've got it pulled up.
You can just read it, I
You,
think.
you can read it. You can read
Want me
it.
to read it? Okay, so this was conditioned in the budget for fiscal year 22 of $150,000. Funds to be released upon 1, Parks and Recreation presentation on the key findings of the study and its next steps towards the development of a field master plan. And 2, BET review and approval of the specific use of this appropriation.
Thank you. So, we were holding department meetings yesterday, and we're talking about this item. One of the things that we asked for things last month, and also yesterday specifically. You have the additional information, which I think we asked for a breakout of the costs on each of these locations, and
Yeah, I believe that we shared in the packet the plan for this specific use. So for condition number 1, we shared the key findings of the report and then the master plan. And I think we all are kind of in agreement that this is going to be a multi-year kind of work in progress here together on that piece. But for this specific use of funds, in the packet, we included the 2 CIP sheets and then sent you the specific use broken out by the fiscal year. You have that?
Yeah, we have that, but I think yesterday we asked for a breakout of, well, we asked for it last month, but a breakout by each location and then a breakout of costs. As an example, in fiscal year '21, this still has CMS on here. As in yesterday,
Yeah.
you were talking about 3, so, you know, we're
Yeah, so
looking
we
for this
have,
specific.
we have on fiscal year 21, which is money that's not conditioned, we have the plan, we're breaking it down by $20,000 up to at Moretti, 20,000 at Upper Havemeyer. 20,000, we were looking at CMS, but it looks like we're just gonna do the work at Binney. And Eastern Greenwich Civic Center, up to 25,000. This is for the preliminary engineering, testing, and some of the surveys. And then we have $10,000 for miscellaneous professional services. That's just some of the other, consulting that might come up along the way and that help us develop an RFP. And then 210,000 to begin the construction on the drainage at these locations. That's on the money that's not conditioned. And then on the conditioned money, the 150,000, it will be specifically to start the construction or to continue the construction at these locations. We won't know. We put in here, and Ryan has a better idea than I do, but we put in the pricing, which is if we take Moretti, which is our main location, we're starting with Moretti, Upper Havemeyer, and then just at Binney, it's just going to be water table testing. We're not going to do any other testing until we get a sense of the water table. At Moretti and Upper Havemeyer, we're not going to know exactly, the piece until you start getting into the soil sampling. This is not environmental testing. This is just some soil sampling for the type, native soils, grass seed type, some of the water table testing, and that will inform some of the other information, in survey type as you get into there. So these were kind of the max amounts that we would spend on this type of work at these locations. So starting with Moretti, Upper Havemeyer, Binney, but Binney's water table testing only for now because that's in a flood zone. And we all know about a lot of the issues that we have at Binney. And then to begin some of that money. And that miscellaneous that we put in there for 10,000, that's to help as we get some of the contracting for the construction, to have some extra review as we develop the bid documents and review the bid proposals for that.
So I just continuing my question, then we got to talk to, so then is this premature to ask for the money for the construction, the 150, since you don't know yet how you're going to be spending it? You're going to be finding that out from,
No, I think we're ready to start because we also want to simultaneously, especially as we start with Moretti and Upper Havemeyer, we need to be able to start with getting the contracting out and ready as soon as we start getting some of these results. So the goal was to have at least the remaining funds for construction and the 150 ready to go so that we can start contracting, know how much we have now, because we only have a very limited window. As you know, we can't put any fields down. So the time frame to do this work is small. So we want to be able to know kind of exactly what we have to work with and get the contract issued.
so,
And Ryan, if you have anything else to add in that too, I mean, you can articulate this a little better than I can, but I think that's the thought process.
I guess Ryan had no further comments? He's muted?
Yeah, I was muted. Sorry about that. So the preliminary engineering is going to inform the extent of the amount of improvements that need to happen. Do we need to do deep tine aeration simply by breaking up a compacted sublayer? Do we need to add sand to the root zone mix? Is there irrigation on the site? Do we need to bring that in? So it's really bringing those, doing that preliminary study to form a baseline of the improvements at each of the sites. And the dollar value, the 150K is going to be very, very limited based on the square footage of the sites. So the additional funds would help supplement that at any of the sites. And then pending on which site is constructible within the allotted funds, that would be pushed forward, is my understanding.
Okay, questions? Leslie?
Yes, when we look at these two appropriations together, the fiscal 21 and fiscal 22, the efforts that Parks and Rec has done on the past year has been the focus on developing that implementation plan so that you're now in a stage, prepared to move forward. You've identified 4 locations that would benefit from improvements in the field to increase the hours of playability. But had not yet been able to utilize those fiscal 21 funds to actually do any of the engineering. Is that correct assessment of where you are?
Yes, that's a correct assessment. That we've gone through the process of, we first presented the initial study last year, and then we put together the master plan and a draft capital plan that's before the board now. And then we're now in a place where we're ready, where we have a pretty good idea, a very good idea, I really should say. There's been a lot of time and effort put into the plan before everybody. And we now are at the place where we're ready to start executing that drainage, low-hanging fruit, to be honest, and then start moving into some of these other large-scale projects. But there's been a lot of, a year and a half to 2 years worth of analysis on this information.
So
Before
I'd be
us today.
prepared at the right time to make the motion to release the funds. I don't think additional detail on the use of the 150 on whether we're dealing with impacted soil and what has to happen there versus adding piping for drainage or other things improves my ability to assess whether those funds are needed. So I would support releasing the funds today, and we'll make a motion at the right time.
Okay. Nisha, do you have any comments or questions?
Actually,
I'm sorry?
I actually don't have any.
No, do you? I have a question about Moretti. Moretti is, I think we talked about this before, it's in Coscob? Where is Moretti?
At Bible Street Park?
I'm sorry?
Bible Street Park?
Bible Street Park. Is this the area that got the especially hard hit by Ida? And
No.
No, this is not the area that was especially hard hit by Ida. Is that correct? In Coscob?
This was, and Ryan, I may need to lean on you a little bit on some of this, because I know we dove into this specifically for Leslie preview. I was looking at, because you asked me if this was in, the flood zone concerns.
Yeah, so this, from my understanding, there's a historic water course that ran through the site. Historically, it was culverted underneath the park and rerouted as time went on. At one point, the Bible Street Park did go underwater due to I don't know if it was Ida. I don't know which rain event it was. Since then, the pipes were inspected and they were clogged at several locations and cleaned out. And that has essentially, there hasn't been a flooding problem since, per my understanding. And so it is within a flood zone, and it'll be coordination with DPW and the regulators on the appropriate action. And there are several fields, locations, athletic facilities, school facilities around the state that are within flood zones that oftentimes are athletic fields. And it's common practice we're not really changing grades, we're improving the soil conditions that are out there today. So it'll be floodable.
Leslie, I'm sorry, I have one question I just thought of.
So Nisha has a question.
So I just want, in terms of understanding the process, I think Leslie Moriarty just asked the same question. The 210 from fiscal year 21 plus the 150 from this year, the 360 or so that you're kind of outlining for the construction of the drainage, is that something that has already been bid out? And is that kind of, you have a sense of this is what it's going to, how are we coming? You've already come up with a budget, it's going to be roughly 360 for these 3 or 4 fields, and are you now going to go out to, what's the process? You go out to bid, and then you have different people help you, or this is just done all in-house with DPW?
This will be primarily work that's done. The actual, depending on the findings, the work will be bid out. That's one of the reasons we want to get the 150 released so that we can start the bid process now and have people lined up for the right time of year. And so the portion you see before you, the construction, that will be an outside vendor that's competitively bid. There will be more work than we easily have enough work to do with the 210 and the 150. There's the additional 600,000, which will either be funded through capital or through the ARP committee, which is the point that Ben brought up, where that's presented in between both locations at the moment. And that will be the additional work on the other locations, but we at least will be able to bid out the 210 plus the 150,
So
and that will be competitively bid.
Yeah, so Blaise, just to be clear, the 360 or so is your internal estimate of what you think these 4 fields, the drainage for these 4 fields will cost to construct?
That would be not the 3. We're going to do the testing at the 4 fields. That will probably be 2 fields worth,
The 360?
and the remaining 600 would be the other 2
Oh, gotcha.
possible locations. That was more accurate, Ryan, right? About 2 locations.
Yeah, we're looking for fields that don't necessarily need full depth reconstruction, because that would be significantly more than the combined total. So where the fields that could benefit from putting under drains in, like Upper Havmeyer, there's already drainage infrastructure up there. I believe it's already irrigated. And so, but it does hold water, and the soil types are pretty silty up there from historical knowledge. So that's why we chose that as one of the sites. Same thing with Bible. It generally drains subsurface okay, but the soils at the surface level in the root zone are, again, silty in nature and hold water. So it's breaking through that layer, modifying it, and bringing it up to speed in terms of drainage. And these are based on anecdotal historical knowledge, and we don't know the exact recipe until we dig test pits in the ground, evaluate all the soil layers, send the soil off to the labs, and then come up with the actual course of action to make these improvements.
So, to Blaise, just to be clear, you're relying on Ryan to provide that estimate based on historical and anecdotal analysis?
We're going to be using the preliminary engineering through Weston and Sampson. We're going to be doing some of that analysis of the soil.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to
And
understand.
simultaneously start developing the bid documents for the actual construction.
Got it. Thank you, guys.
So it is disappointing, though, there isn't more of a breakout, but I can understand in terms of the costs. We talked about it yesterday, but more importantly, we talked about it last month at our meeting, and I thought that's what you're coming back with. But this is better than what we had, so I guess we're making progress. So Leslie, I will take your motion. Is that what?
Just to respond to that, to be fair, they haven't done the engineering study, so they don't know exactly
So is there a second to Leslie's motion? Is there a second to Leslie's motion? So Leslie has made a motion to release the condition on the $150,000. You know, I guess I will take a vote, but before I take the vote, part 2 of this condition does says BET review and approval of the specific use of the appropriation, and maybe you've taken that as the feels rather than the detail of how the money will be spent.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. So I will take a vote on Leslie's motion to release the conditions. And I'll start with Leslie.
Yes.
And Laura.
Yes.
And Nisha.
How about yes?
And I'll vote yes. So that's 4-0-0.
Can I recommend this be a routine item?
Okay, routine?
I believe release of conditions.
Release
is
of
typically
conditions are
not
actually
routine.
recommendations to the BET, so we don't normally do that because we don't have the actual authority to release conditions. So we don't normally on these kind of items say routine or not routine. I mean, it's,
I'm just trying to clarify whether or not the outside consultant is expecting to attend our meeting on Tuesday. I feel like we've seen a lot of Ryan.
so that,
Chair can decide.
that's a fair point. Dan Ozesmir is with us. Are you expecting the engineer to be at our meeting next Tuesday evening, Dan? Or you can decide afterwards, yeah.
Yeah, from my point of view,
Microphone, sorry. They can't hear you.
So from my point of view, I've seen this 3 times already, but maybe the next hour.
Okay, so, and then you'll, of course, be in contact with Blaze. Probably he seems to be running this project. With Blaze, at this point in time, Dan is just going to check further with the other people who aren't present. But again, we don't normally say whether it's routine or not routine on release of conditions. Okay?
Okay, that sounds good. I'll check in.
So thank you very much, Blaze, and thank you, Ryan. We appreciate your participation today. So our
Thank
next,
you.
Thanks, everyone.
So our next item on our agenda is PS1 Parking Services, release of conditions for $1 million. So I think, should you handle this in terms of, well, let's just say on, the parking fund did visit with the BET on our first day of our budget department meetings, and at that point in time discussed their release of conditions and have presented, with great help from Roland Geiger, our budget director, their monthly numbers through the end of January. Roland, do you have any further comments on the, release of conditions? I think they've,
I had questions on 2 items on the financial statements. One was the line called rental of buildings and other, which is budgeted for $256,000. There are 2 items in that line. One is $200 and some thousand that we paid to Ashford for our share of the spaces underneath. And the balance of it is about $400 a month for rental of a Westies space.
for what, I'm sorry?
Westies. Storage, about $400 a month. That's what you see right now in that $2,700. That's just 7 months of Westies. The payment to Ashford is sometime come January, February, March, somewhere in there.
Okay, thank you. So do we have any questions?
And I think the other question was, in the area of capital,
Mhm.
there are interim appropriations that are there, or budget adjustments, rather. And this is an annual fund, which, like the general fund, all unspent appropriations lapse. However, the capital has to be reestablished. So what you see in the original budget is the budget items that were approved for the 21-22 budget, but the carryover that hadn't been spent for prior year capital has to be reloaded manually, which is why you see budget revisions for things that you have not been asked to revise.
Okay.
Thank you, Roland.
Do I have any questions on anything? No? Nisha, do I have any? No? And whatever. Thank you, Roland. Appreciate your support on this one, and I bet Parking Services did also, so they wouldn't have to attend today. So is there a motion to release the conditions on this one? Laura?
All right, so based on the prior conversation, I think the motion is to recommend release of conditions for the parking fund.
Exactly. And so that's Laura
Hold on a
Erickson.
second.
Do I have a second? Nisha? Those in favor?
Aye.
400. Okay. So now we come to our final item. And so I am looking. Interesting. We have no one from.
I just texted Al, because he's in that meeting with the outside attorneys,
Right?
and he asked me to text him. I said, when the Park Service came, I said 10 minutes, and he texted back, okay. So he should be appearing
Momentarily, huh?
momentarily.
Okay, so so I would suggest that we move on to new business economic conditions report and come back and pick up this item when Al joins us, which should be within the next 10 minutes. Roland, does that sound like a good plan? This is then your area of expertise.
All right. Conveyance and building permits continue to be strong, although they do seem to be slowing up a little bit. But conveyance tax is already over budget by almost $800,000. Overall, the general fund is ahead of last year by $32 million, of which almost 30 is higher taxes than the prior year. We collected about $1 million more in bridge money than a year ago. Tipping fees are up almost $700,000 from a year ago. And building permits are up, well, which is on the front page, almost 500. And we started to close out encumbrances to revenue earlier this year than last year. So we have over $400,000 of encumbrances that we closed out, which we didn't start doing until later in the year in 21. And that gets you to the $32 million.
Super. Thank you for that update. Leslie?
If I can ask a question on the tax revenue being so far ahead of prior year, that's not because of higher assessments, that's timing of cash, or do you know? I know when we look in December, often it's timing. Is it also timing end
I
of
think Pete,
year January?
I know the answer. Last year, we had the deferral program. The taxes weren't due until April 1st. When Roland comes here in April, they should match between the 2 years with the addition of the increase in the tax levy.
Thank you.
on the expenditures, we're pretty much where we were for the last few months. The big difference is on debt. It's a swing of almost $10 million, and it's made up of two pieces. The debt service is down $4 million from a year ago, and the timing of recognizing the premium was earlier this year. We didn't recognize the premium until February last year. So $5 million of that difference will go away next month. but we're left with a real $4 million reduction in the debt service, which will, that's for the year.
So that's good news. And so any questions on Roland's report, revenues or expenses?
Well, I think this is very helpful just prior to tomorrow's discussion on revenue, so thank you.
Leslie, any questions, comment? Nish? No? So, so Roland, thank you for keeping track of this. I mean, I did notice that building permits, they still seem to be higher of the 6 years that we're tracking, including the current year. This is the highest year, and it's even up about a 6 over last year. So I actually think we're doing extremely well in building permits. Of course, we never know whether those are for potential taxable properties or tax exempt properties. So that also makes a difference in terms of what we can see or expect. So anyway, okay, just because I've mentioned it in the past, the Bureau of Labor Statistics CPI for our area for this particular month, well, the month of January, was up 1.1%, and over the previous month, and it's up 5.1% for the year. So this is just information as we look at our, probably more pertinent as we begin to look at our budget and those discussions. So now we've covered that, and we, yes?
Can I just ask a question? It's related to the revenue report and just to tee up for tomorrow. When we look at a projection of conveyance tax, a lot of it has to do with normal turnover and inventory, and I don't have the information, but I don't know how we normally project. Is it just trends and then a continuation of those trends, or do we actually look at projected real estate transactions and what segment of the real estate market? I don't know how we do it, but I just have the sense that there's much less inventory. I mean, we've been through an extraordinary couple of years, but I just would like to get the backup to our assumptions and how we project. So that's just teeing it up for tomorrow. You don't have to respond now.
And Pete will be doing the revenues presentation tomorrow, so that's also something Pete can keep in mind in here. And of course, Lauren will be with us too. Just to continue this, waiting for Al so that we, when we finish, should we just move on to the approval of the Budget Committee meeting minutes for the January 11th meeting? Is there a motion for that? So Laura will move that. I'm sorry, who seconded? Nisha? So Laura and Nisha? And those in favor? Aye. So that vote is 4-0-0. So we're still waiting for our,
If you wish, you could take FI 2 up, the bonding resolution, because that we don't need Al for that. That's actually a finance bonding resolution.
we could do that.
That
it's a little-
assumes you're going to approve the.
It's a little backwards. I don't know. How do others feel about that? I did skip over. My feeling was that we should wait. Leslie, you're the same way? Oh, okay, so we're still waiting for Al. Okay, so.
Can I just
will-
ask, is Al's interim replacement coming as well, or is it just Al? Is Luigi coming?
I'd ask him to also, there he is.
There's Al.
There we go.
The timing is perfect. We have gone through every agenda item, waiting for you and Luigi to join us to come and update us on the request for an additional appropriation for Eastern Greenwich Civic Center. So welcome, Al Manelli, and would you like to introduce someone with you?
Luigi Romano, he's my interim replacement. This is Luigi Romano, he's my interim replacement of superintendent. Say hi, Luigi.
Hello, everyone.
So welcome Luigi to your first Budget Committee meeting.
Thank you.
So the project was competitively bid. The bids came back on the 28th of January. We had received 12 bids, 9 were deemed responsive. The bids range from a low of $20,312,000 to $24,231,000, with the average of bids being $22,417,000. Based on the low bid received, we have a shortfall of funds of $4,040,000 for the construction and the contingency for the project.
So would you like to tell us more about the project? And, obviously, these bids came in substantially more, so can you tell us about the low bidder or the next low bidder? What flexibility? Is there any opportunity to go back and do any
So-
kind of financial engineering to this project? Is there, or, whatever? Is there any chance to, have you done reference checks on these firms? They're less familiar to me than the ones the town has dealt with
Yes.
in the past, and give
So
us some more information,
Okay, so the
please.
low bidder, we've been vetting out the low bidder. All reference checks made to date have been very well, he's been very well documented. People want to hire him back, very highly respected in what he does. We've also called the low bidder in. We've had a meeting with him in the purchasing department to go over all the all the amendments that were done to the bid. We talked about several items within the bid specifications, making sure he covered everything, and it appears that he has agreed that everything in his low bid, his low bid cost of $20,312,000 covers what has been specified. So, as you know, when we draw buildings for the town of Greenwich, we're subject to planning and zoning regulations and ARC and everything else that normal developers do in town. We do not get a break. So, everything that was requested by planning and zoning and the architectural review committee and any other commission or board of the town of Greenwich was incorporated into the plans. So the plan is the plan.
So, can you just run through and highlight for, those on the screen too, where, you, prior to going to bed, your architect, TSKP, had done some estimates, and DPW had done some adjustments, as it always does. It does great work, there's no question here. But then the bids came in over $4 million higher than we had, well, not quite, because we added the contingency, but,
Right.
in effect. So can you go through and highlight some of these points, please?
Sure. We requested, TSKP had a responsibility to provide us a professional estimate, and Professional Construction Services Incorporated of Stamford performed the estimate. Their estimate was adjusted by myself, because there's several items in the estimate at that time, which we would normally do, the town would do on its own. So we upped the demolition cost, and we moved out several items such as like the data wiring, security wiring, all that stuff is done with town contractors, not a general contractor, because we have a commitment to IT that when we build the buildings, the network backbone would be done with a certain certification. So we have a state contract approved with a local vendor to do that. Some furniture costs were included, so those were adjusted and removed from the estimate. So the DPW adjusted estimate was $16,726,000, which was represented in last year's budget. Then, based on those adjusted numbers, we compared that to the low bidder, and it appears that the increase costs have to do with basically anything that has to do with steel production or energy, like concrete takes a lot of energy to mix. that's where the cost increases are happening. So things like thermal moisture and protection, which is over by 300,000, that's actually including the metal standing seam roof that's in the building. Concrete is up, again, a lot of energy is expended in the concrete production process. Metals, that's all the structural steel of the building, that's up. Openings would be the steel openings, the doors, such. Finishes is up, a lot of that has to do with the metal storefronts and the window mullions. And specialty items, which is not up a lot. I mean, if the others were down, we wouldn't even have noticed it. The other big item, of course, is heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, which, of course, that's all steel production, ductwork, mechanical equipment. Anything that has the supply chain issues, exports into the country or imports into the country, all that stuff is running very high at the moment. And then earthwork. When the original estimate was prepared, the final design of the stormwater system had yet to be completed. We are doing the parking lot on the other side of Harding Road now as part of the project to reduce the flooding issues. And foundation work at the back of the building where the soil is soft. It's not going to be piles, but it's going to be structural. The dirt is going to be, the existing soil is going to be removed, and structural compacted soils are going to be put in its place. And when you add all those up, that's the difference in the bid.
So do we have any questions or comments? Nisha?
I do have lots of questions. All right. Well, thank you, Al, for that explanation. So first, I wanted to just get a sense of you said that you used an estimator out of Stanford. Who was, can you just share the name of the estimator?
Yeah, it's Professional Construction Services Incorporated. They work for TSKP.
And would it make sense, and then on this, when you do the DPW adjustment, where you distribute the overhead and the escalation, is that something that's typically done with estimates, where you actually will take the escalation and also
Well, the
bring it- is that just
professional
something internal?
estimators, we have to fit it into the town's.
That's
the way
something
the
you
town
typically do?
bids, yeah. So the professional estimator calls out escalation of 5%, he calls out overhead and profit. He's just adding them to the end result. We don't bid like that, so we have to apply it to the different divisions to make it whole.
Right, and I was just thinking about it in terms of looking at the discrepancy between the estimate and the bid. Is it, and just in the industry, if that's standard, that's okay, I just wanted to understand that. And then I guess on the earthwork, which is kind of the two big glaring thing is earthwork and then the steel aspect of it. So on earthwork, I think you mentioned that the estimator perhaps didn't have some color that, I guess some
Right,
information came out afterwards. Does it?
We did the estimate to be in time for the last year's budget, what we're doing right now. So we had not completed the full stormwater design. And then at that point, once the money was in the budget, the next step was just to get real pricing, which was this bid.
I mean, I guess just from, considering that's the largest discrepancy from the actual estimate, and I don't like to use percentages,
Yeah.
I don't like to throw out 1,000% without
I
any kind of,
understand.
but because it's a material number, it would be interesting to see, I don't know if we can do this, go back to the estimator to get a sense of what our professional estimator would gauge that at. And
As the drawing is completed now?
Yeah.
I mean, with the completed drawings, I don't know what we're going to really get out of that, but I could probably ask that question.
And then the second thing, I wanted to just make a couple comments on materials, on both steel and concrete and some of the things that we hear a lot about in terms of, increasing prices. And this morning, I just printed out the price of steel, so I'll share this with you guys, but I just wanted to kind of give a color. I follow some of these commodities anyways, but the price of steel, and Al, you'll know this, has been circa, not just for the benefit of you all, because I've looked at this a little bit, the price of steel has been circa like around $500-600 for the last 25 years. And we saw it in 2021, in the second half of 2021, go up to $2,000, right? Which was an unprecedented move, like never seen before. And really what's happened, and so there's really no, on a macro level, there's no real, and I'll give you an explanation of why I'm giving this background. There's no real supply constraint with steel on the long term. It's just that in Q3, Q4, we saw this huge spike up because of, like all things relaxing, everyone wanted to build at the same time, and then inflation kind of did its job, and now as people start to build. In the last month and a half, steel has come down, and you'll see the exponential price has just gone from like 2,000 to like 15, come down like about 40-50% just in the last 30 days, and I think you'll appreciate that as well. And the general consensus from anyone in the macro market will say this is probably going to settle somewhere this year. This will be resolved, and we'll see back to kind of stable prices for this commodity, and also others as well. And the reason I'm making this point is I think just because of timing of when we took this out to bid, and that Q4 moment, right in November, December, at that point, the price of some of these commodities was at the very top of kind of unprecedented. So even today, we might see a very different price for that structural steel. So structural steel, most like in a building like this, I don't know if you have the numbers, Al, maybe like 500 tons or 1,000 tons. It is definitely a driver of some of these numbers.
It is.
Right? I don't know if you have that number, but we can definitely do the math.
Steel is used throughout this whole building. It's a masonry steel building.
But when they do the estimate, it'll actually say, right, X number of tons, right?
They
So if
don't,
it's-
they don't quite do it like that because structural steel is different from ductwork steel and
Yeah.
door steel.
Structural steel is probably the cheapest, right, than some of the other ones.
Actually, structural steel, we were getting quotes last summer of 3,000 into
Right.
$3,000 a ton, and it's gone over $10,000 a ton.
So I think the comment I'd like to just make on some of this stuff is I think, especially because some of these products, we don't even, even if we were to break ground today, some of the stuff you would need, towards year end or towards next year, it's very possible. I don't know if some of these contracts are fixed or they're cost plus, or we can kind of index the price of the metals to the cost of steel, because I feel really what's happened here in this bid, especially for concrete and steel, and some of the other products as well, because some of these things will relax towards year end, is we've kind of gone out to bid at, and again, just because of timing of when we put this out, I have a feeling that I just don't want the town to be taken advantage of, because we're not, in some sense, we don't know these markets, we don't follow these markets as well, and we, it's not, something that's our core, but I do feel like this bid would look very different even if we were to put it out today or 2 months from now, and considering that.
I don't agree with that, sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm just, again, my own personal assessment of kind of my own analysis of kind of how some of these bids are playing out, and considering kind of, we don't have a gun to our head that we need to buy the steel today. Steel has a 6 to 8 week lag time. Most likely we would, I think we would benefit if we were to go back to whoever the lowest bidder is and kind of index that price, because that is a big driver of this.
Unfortunately, with an RFB, we can't negotiate any prices. It's the price that's submitted.
RFP. This is an RFP, not.
This is an RFB by town's purchasing regulations. And
Yeah.
I believe they follow the state regulations. So we can't even negotiate. That's why we had several unit prices to pre-establish pricing, and we had alternates in to try to lock down pricing ahead of time. The other thing that's happening is energy is also going at the same time. Exports and imports from China are down, so there's going to be a big demand on the U.S. steel industry, and we don't make that much steel anymore as we used to do.
I think one of the things is we don't make as much steel anymore because the steel industry went bankrupt because
Yeah,
it was
well,
so unprofitable. The price
right.
of steel really, I just want to just kind of, I think a lot of anecdotally what we've heard by a lot of people in this, and this is not just you, Al, but we're going to have a lot of capital projects that are going to come in front of us, and we're going to hear this over and over again, that supplies are up, materials are up, and I just want us to also just appreciate the fact that a lot of this stuff is going to get in check this year, and that's not me saying, that's just general industry macro analysts saying it's the price of steel is not expected to be, in just last month and a half, it's come down 50%, just to kind of show you how much movement and volatility there was, and it was just in the last 4 to 5 months.
And again, I know the lumber price is a lot better, and the lumber prices are still not back down to what they were pre-COVID.
They are absolutely not, but they're down significantly else from where they were,
Okay,
right? So
understand.
again, I think it might make, and I don't know if there is, again, not understanding not having a full appreciation for the process that the town has in terms of having the ability to take this back. But my initial inclination here would be that I feel like we're locking in prices at the top of the market, and it's not, from a prudent standpoint, I don't think it's the right thing for us as a town to lock ourselves into these contracts at really the top of the market when we don't have to buy the steel today, right? We don't need it today, right? So we have to go back to these guys. These guys also, I understand you're saying it's not,
But they
it's
have to
not normal.
order it.
It's not a year and a half lag time now.
No, I'm not
Yeah.
saying it's a year and a
Yeah.
half. I'm not.
That's fine.
no,
We can
no.
give 'em a
But
bogey,
they do have
right?
to,
Yeah.
get orders in. I mean, there is supply chain issues currently, and it doesn't seem to be lifting very soon. The other quick concern we have is, if we delay this project, when do we go back out to bid?
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying I think we went out to bid at the top of the market.
Yeah, so when do we go back out to bid?
So I think it'll come in.
But when?
So that's and again, I'm saying I don't have a
So,
full.
yes,
yeah.
as I included in the documents, we're gonna have to make a decision about the boiler or shut the Civic Center down. And the BET, I didn't even present this back in 13, 14. At that time, they put an account number in, so in case the boiler at the Civic Center went, or the heating system went, we would have funds to get it back going. But we've been babying that boiler so long that I can't fix it anymore. That picture is actually a video. We had to plug it with a wooden dowel and put radiator fluid in to try to slow the leak down. We're hoping that we could shut it down at the end of the heating season and not restart it. So if we delay this and we wait for the markets to justify, we're gonna have to fix the boiler, or the Civic Center is gonna be shut, because we can't turn that boiler on next fall.
I can't comment on that. No, I'll wait for Laura.
Laura, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Nisha. Thank you, Leslie. So, I mean, this is unwelcome news, right? I mean, no one wants an overage of this magnitude. But, I can appreciate, it's hard to time the market. It is what it is. This is the situation we're in, and if you could just help us understand, you've already outlined the situation with the building, which certainly has been patched together in a remarkable way over 20-some plus years, considering the age of this facility and how long we've been talking about replacing this building. But these bids are good for 120 days.
Yes.
And if you could just talk about the original construction time, I mean, there's other factors at work. There's the materials and the supply chain issues, but there's also there's other things. I mean, we're never going to get it right.
Right, so the other thing that happens is on all public bids of this size, we're subject to the prevailing wage rate. I don't know if anybody knows what that is.
I'm very familiar with that.
Okay,
Yeah.
but that's where the state of Connecticut tells the town what they will pay. It's what the contractors have to pay its employees, including benefits. So there's a classification for asbestos removers, steel workers, electricians, plumbers, carpenters. There's a whole list, several pages long, and it's the hourly rate. So all the contractors bidding this job have to use those rates to come up with their labor costs. So I think one of the things that speaks volumes is that we had 9 responsive bidders, and the average bid was pretty much between 20 and 24 million. It was almost even. It was almost perfect. I mean, there was a lot, there's a lot of interest in doing the job, and the prices were all close together. So this could be, it's part of it is people are looking for work, and they're trying to do it as cheaply as possible. And this is based on the rules that we are governed by. This is the price they came up with.
So just to follow up, in your estimation, would it make sense to hold off doing this project and rebid at a later date? Or we run the risk of, A, the boiler, we're gonna have to close down the
It's
Civic
not
Center.
even a risk. The boiler, well, I'm not gonna be here, but in good conscience, Luigi probably would not start that boiler up in the fall. It's too dangerous.
So that's the choice. Really, it's either or. We move ahead with this project and break ground. I don't know when we're hoping to break ground.
I also, my opinion is also, having done a lot of these gigantic projects in town, like the police station, the central fire station, I don't think delaying, even if we delayed the bid so that we wouldn't have to do the boiler in the fall and just rebid, say, 3 months from now, I don't think there'd be much of a price difference.
Leslie?
Just to talk a little bit more about the public process and the bidding and the impact on the dollars. This bid went out, didn't have very many ad alternates, so you have a scope of a project that went out. Just give me what those prices are, so you don't have too many escape valves built into that bid, is that correct?
Right.
And the public bid process is fairly limiting. I believe you indicated this kind of in your prior answer, that if you go to rebid, sort of these public responses to what it would cost sort of sets the floor for the project, that people just move forward. And typically, these contractors, in replying to the bid, kind of lock in their prices, especially on commodities that are varying wildly. Now, they may take some positions and take a risk of saying not locking in their price on certain raw materials, hoping that the prices change. And it could be that in steel, they'd be benefited, but there may be other line items which could swing the other way. So it's a risk to think that if you even waited a year, if you felt that the commodity pricing really needs to settle down and that it'll come back in a year from now, you just don't know. It's a guess as to, at that point, what the potential change in commodity pricing would be, offset by the inflation factor in labor and other areas.
Exactly. You can't predict I know there's a trend downward right now, but you can't predict what other things are gonna go up. And it's a gamble. You're tossing the dice whether a year from now or 6 months from now, it's gonna be better, and you just don't know.
Yeah, and there are significant costs to contractors working for the municipality between our bonding requirements and the other
Performance bonds,
performance bonds,
the
insurance
prevailing wage.
requirements.
Yes.
But that's true for all of these bidders, and we certainly had probably 9 is a pretty good number of bidders who came in on the job. Also want to point to, I think the first this project's been on the list since 2000 and one of the facilities that needed to be redone. It's been discussed for a long period of time. There certainly was a lot of discussion and compromise on the ed specs at the final analysis to get here. I know that the recent work by the Sustainability Committee, they would prefer to change the design or some elements to get their initiatives in here. And I know someone on the call, Stephen Hall, has been working on that committee, did send me a letter I'll share with the rest of the committee. But there's always a lot of work that goes into this to get to this point in time. And the question is whether it's beneficial to the town, both from a financial perspective as well as expectation to the community and delivery of services. Do you stop? Do you redesign? Do you rebid? Because to expect the prices to come down, you almost have to change the scope. I'm not sure you just go rebid because you're going out in the market at the wrong time. I'm not sure our expectation, given the public process, would be that we'd get a significant decline. I think to go down that path, you're almost sending the project back down to redesign and change the product so that the price comes in lower. And to me, that's the decision that this board is looking at if we don't move forward with this.
So if you were gonna pull the project back and redesign it, we would have to start basically from zero. We would need design money all over again, select a new architect.
I'd just like to just cut off 1 second. By no means am I suggesting we redesign this product or this project. I'm not even suggesting we hold off on it. I'm very supportive of this project, and I think we need to move forward with it. One question, is the demolition being done by the same
Yes.
provider? The only thing I'm pointing out is, and I think anybody that's, if this were your own money coming out of your own pocket, and I think we should all treat public money as our own money, if we had just gone out to bid on a project at what, not what I am saying, what the market is saying is at the top of the market, we would be prudent to not go back out with the same project. And I'm not by any means suggesting that we need to change the specs or we need to not move forward with it. I'm just saying some of the products that we need in this project, we don't need today. We need them 6 months from now, or a year from now, maybe a year and a half from now. And not what I am saying, what the market is saying is this is, especially the ones that are driving it, not some of the smaller ones, the steel. And the largest delta that we have, we don't have our own professional estimator giving us their own number. So I don't have a strong level of, I'm not looking at some of the other ones, and there are deltas everywhere on this. But the two drivers, and we're going to hear this again in other capital projects, that's why I just wanted to bring it up now, is I think it's again, a little bit, we wouldn't be doing our job if we didn't ask these questions. And if there is an opportunity, again, and understanding how constrained we are in public project bidding, if there is, for example, an opportunity to index some of these prices because the steel is, they're just going out in the market and buying it, right? It's not like there is, a certain layer of underlying price that comes into hand here. And maybe we can't, and that can be the answer. That's not something that happens in public projects. It is what it is. And that's fine. And that's fine. But I think I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask those specific questions.
Just if I could explore that, just to understand it, on whether we can or can't do it, because it's what you're proposing, and I'm not discounting it, is that the bid, instead of being a fixed price bid for delivering the product, is that the town takes then the risk for the commodity pricing that we're committing to a certain volume of product. And
Leslie,
then
I'm
it's
only
just
saying it
based on the
for,
price.
and I'm only saying it for steel simply because the 3 million swing is, there's some guys bidding 3.5 million, and I know exactly where they're bidding on that, and that's literally the top of the market, and nobody believes that's where most likely they're going to make us pay $3,500, $2,000 a ton for steel, and they're going to go buy it for $600, and maybe they're going to buy it for $800.
And that happens, right? That and all these line items.
Of course, but
let
I'm
me
saying
just
that's the
ask-
driver. But I'm saying that is the driver of this particular increase, which is why I'm focused on that.
But let me ask, is that kind of structure, we may not have done it before, but that's permissible in the sense if the town wanted to take the risk on a commodity price. I'm not saying it's advisable, but just to explore the potential. I don't know whether bidders work on that basis, the people who do this kind of construction, municipal construction. Have you come across that?
I guess there's also, the best way I could analyze or come up with an answer on this, there's also, where they pay contractors to finish in a certain amount of time, and they give them a bonus, and if he's late, they have to pay. Well, we'd be in the law department. I can't see, there'd be always an argument about that. And the same thing would be with the commodities. Where do you lock it down? And that's why doing the GC process this way and bidding a project that's a 2-year project, the town's guaranteed what the price is gonna be. Granted, right now, we're over budget, I understand that, but you know what? We're not gonna have to, unless there's a change in the project or something we missed, and that's what the contingency's for, we're not gonna be coming back and saying we need more money because the prices went up.
Right, and certainly the understanding is the town takes the risk when we go out with, let's say, a volume-based. And then there is a process issue of who makes a determination of when the steel buy occurs, right? And
You give it in other contracts, which I've been familiar with, is you just give a bogey. You say, all right, because right now, for example, even if you bought it today, it'd be cheaper than when they bid, right? Again, I understand the difficulty of trying to pin it. I just I'm so hesitant to want to to approve this increase because I feel some of this is controllable, especially because of timing. And the second one, we have no clarity on what our independent estimator thinks. It's, we're just kind of taking the number that these guys are giving.
The other risk with trying, can I just make one more
Yes.
point? I'm sorry, Leslie.
No, the back and forth is what,
Yeah, through the chair, can I have the conversation? I think the question may go to Al, but if I can remember what my question is, but typically, when public process is it's a very public process. Everybody now knows the bid. Everyone now knows what every other contractor bid. So if you go out again with the same job, the same scope, changing just one parameter, which is that the town's going to take the risk on the pricing of this deal, that we'll just lock in the quantity and then determine some mechanism of when the price gets locked in. And we've done this before with other pricing. The expectation would be, what would be the expectation for the rest of the bid prices, right? Everybody knows this becomes typically the floor pricing on each of these items, and then things move up from there, I think is the experience that I've had in projects.
So now that the cat is out of the bag, I would expect that the general contractors would turn to the subcontractors and start to squeeze them and to get their prices down. And then the only recourse the subcontractor has at that point is to pick apart the contract and say, well, after the contract's in place, that wasn't accounted for. You weren't clear on this item. It'd be a constant battle because they're gonna have to make up their funds someplace. They're gonna have to make their profits someplace.
I'm kind of asking a question that the answer is we really don't know, because you go out to, but I know there's always been a hesitancy to going out to bid a second time with the same scope, because there's information out in the public as to what the lowest guy put out there. And it's not like someone else comes in and takes just the lowest line item value, right? So there is a risk that all of the pricing becomes inflated and people just try and figure out how high can they go and still win a contract.
Yes.
Do you have any ability to go back to the lowest bidder? And you're saying that that's just part of the public process, that you cannot,
The public process on RFP is you take the lowest bid.
and you
As it's
cannot,
written, you can't negotiate.
you can't negotiate any piece of it?
And that's why we add alternates in or unit pricing, so if we encounter something, like say we hit rock, we have a price per ton to remove the rock, so that we're not arguing about what the cost of rock removal is down the road.
Understood, but the,
But you can't go back to these line items and say, well, can you lower the price? We can't do
no,
that.
but in good faith, you can't go back to your lowest bidder and say, listen, we really want you to have it, but this is gonna be
Yeah,
the,
give us $500,000 off. No, you can't do that.
not 500,000 off.
But
Yeah,
4
I'm not a
million.
bigger number than that.
4 million,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly, yeah. The 4,040,040.
So I have a couple questions still, Al. Sure. And mine come back to the earthwork number, and, quite frankly, by the time this went out to bid, the drainage work, design should have been completed, and I would have expected the TSKP would have had that differential estimated as, and I know you are very detailed about this. So, I am surprised that that aspect of this project would come in, depending if it's TSKP, but basically 10 times greater, or 8 times greater, in approximate numbers. So there are a couple of things that I'll ask you about. I think at one point, one of the things that happened on this project was initially we said there were a lot of chatter to try and keep within the footprint of the existing building for multiple reasons. So at one point, more recently, I think we talked a little bit about earthwork, and I thought you said there was a soil compaction or weight bearing in the back of the
That's one
building.
of the
And can I
items.
just, and I just want to come back. And then also on the drainage, would this, the drainage obviously was designed later, as you explained to us, but again, I can't understand why that wouldn't have been estimated. And So was that drainage then redesigned because the footprint also was greatly expanded in order to cover the two 8,000 square foot rooms?
No, the drainage has to pass through the engineering department of Public Works to be approved. So if the drainage is not clearly designed, the estimator can't give a clear cost estimate. The other thing too is, I think what they did was they underestimated, or at that time, the parking lot, which was one of the big reasons why we had to do the drainage, was the parking lot across the street. I'm looking at the adjusted number, the $348, $229 that we adjusted it. The paving alone would be that price. The paving just for the parking lot on the other side of Harding Road would be that number. So when you're asking your question about soil, the back of the existing building where it exists now is sinking, or it's soft, and we've found building cracks in the existing building. The architect has seen it, the soil engineers have seen it, and instead of putting piles in, which would be more costly, they found a method to remove the soil and put in a compacted structural soil that would support the weight of the new building. And during the bidding process, a number of the bidders have another method of doing it, but we don't approve submittals during the bid process. You have to go by what's in the drawings. So I am anticipating that there'll be some adjustment, if it's acceptable, this other method, would be a change notice credit to us if we accept it. If the engineers feel that this other process called viral float,
Vibrofill or something.
Vibrafill, if this is accepted by the soil engineer and the architect and our owner's rep, that we would be receiving a credit. How much, don't know.
Okay, I have another couple of questions. I'd like to get to the specifics of this particular bid. So the low bidder was Wilson, and has this contractor worked sufficiently in this area or for the, projects in the town of Greenwich that you're comfortable with using this particular
He
low bidder?
did
I
a
mean,
small
whatever,
project.
whatever you can say.
In the Greenwich area, he did a small project for the Red Cross on the corner of Indian Field and Soundview.
Right,
Yeah. But primarily, he's worked upstate. He did a large project for Central Connecticut State College. They're in the business, one of their prime businesses is on large nursing homes. And they've done a number of those, and the ones that we've been able to contact said that they are the preeminent constructor of those types of facilities, and they would hire them again.
So I mean, you know me and whatever, so, what would, are you concerned that they haven't had sufficient experience working down in Greenwich, bringing all of these contractors that they're probably very happy working in Hartford or wherever they are, bringing them down to our neck of the woods, and will these people really show up and so forth because of the traffic and all the other things? Is this going to be an issue as you get into as I guess Luigi gets into the construction here?
Actually, they tend to hire the subcontractors from the local area. So there was a list of, they provided us a list of subcontractors, multiple electrical contractors, multiple HVAC contractors, multiple plumbing contractors, the whole gambit of disciplines on this, and they just didn't talk to one, they talked to several, and a lot of them are from the Stamford, Greenwich area.
So that gives you comfort? Are you comforted?
The names that I've been seeing are people that have either worked for us directly or have worked for us on other jobs, not every single one.
Right.
But the names are familiar.
And then can you share with us, who you're going to use to help the supervision of this project? The
Owner's rep.
construction administration and owner's rep, who, I don't know whether that's public or what, who you're going to use, and can you just, because,
Okay.
I mean, obviously, I'm concerned because you're not going to be here, and I know even when you've had great, owners reps, how much supervision you've given them.
Well, on this construction administration, that's the architect, and that's been pre-bid as part of his package when he provided the design. So we know what that monthly fee is. So their job is typically to take all the submittals from the general contractor. So anything that the contractor's proposing, whether it's a piece of steel or a door or a piece of air conditioning equipment, there's a submittal form. And it's the architect's job through the CA process to say, yes, this is what we had in mind, and we approve it, or no, this is not what we had in mind, this is an inferior project, we reject it. The owner's rep oversees that process because there might be something that we can get a credit on. If it might be just a step down, but it's okay, and that would be something they would discuss with me and now Luigi. And put his 2 cents in, and then maybe we can get a credit, or maybe there's something better if we do this and have an extra, we can get a better product. So the owner's rep, that is not public knowledge yet, so I can't divulge who that is. But we've had discussions with them, and they fit our budget.
So, I'm sorry, they did your budget?
They fit the budget.
So I have another question on that topic. Are they going to be on site every day to supervise
Yes.
this project?
That's the only way this process works. So, having used an owner's rep at the police station, the fire station, the pool, on those large projects, having somebody there every day to oversee the general contractor and his subcontractors to make sure that we're getting what's on the drawings, the specifications is utterly important.
So there'll be someone there, I think. I think that, in terms of, I'm just checking my own notes to see if there's anything else. Any other questions here? No? No? Okay, so where are we at this point in time?
I just want to comment, Leslie, you were talking about sustainability a minute ago. The only issue that I have with Mr. Hall was that the building is designed for energy efficiency. The argument comes down to whether we're going to be all electric or use the natural gas boilers that we propose in the building. And in my position at that time, as facility director for the town, I felt that the decision was to go with natural gas boilers, and that seems to be the only disagreement.
Thank you. Laura?
Well, Karen Vasiliotis has her hand up, and she was the BET liaison.
No,
So-
I was going to get to her, but I always like to make sure that all of,
Okay,
you're
I just
right.
wanted to make sure.
No, I have my little sticker here. Thank you. So there's no more questions? We're all set here on this one? Okay, so we'll go to Karen, and Karen, can you hear us? Karen, you've been raised. I think you can,
Yep, now I can, thank you.
yep. Do you want to, yeah, okay, thank you.
Thanks, I'm sorry, just coming in from a doctor's appointment for my parents. Al, I just wanted to thank you for all the work you've done just publicly, because I know this has been a long labor of love for you. Just a first question. Relying on the architect's estimator and not having our own estimator, do you feel that would have changed the number we have, the bids we had at all?
Actually, I had the adjusted estimate I did myself, and I felt that their number on demolition, I felt their number was low, and I increased it, and the demolition number is below what we thought. I think no one anticipated the rise in the commodities that we were expecting.
Right, and to that, timing is everything. We couldn't predict COVID. We couldn't predict the cost of goods. A few months ago, it was plywood. Now it's steel and energy. And energy doesn't seem to be going down at all. I know my electric bill has doubled thanks to energy supplies. I'm always for saving money, but I think we've heard that rebidding this would likely not save us money. It probably would cost us more. Would you agree with that?
It would either, I can't really comment on that, but I don't think it's going to cost any less.
Okay. And just to echo what Laura said, if we don't go ahead with this project, Eastern Greenwich Civic Center will essentially be closed. And I guess the question for this board is, do we really want that? Do we really want our board to be responsible for closing this building? I would suggest that I would not like that. And just as a member of the committee, I know that, we had numerous public hearings. We've had a lot of feedback from the community. This building is basically what the community has asked for. At this point, I'm all for saving money. I'm not for spending money, but it is what it is. We are where we are. With respect to subcontractors, I know they're hungry for work. I have a massive house going up across the street from me. The subcontractors are actually coming from as far away as Vermont. I'm sorry, the workers are coming as far as Vermont. I mean, they're hungry for work. So I just say, let's approve this and get this going. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. So,
Leslie, one other thing before I forget. The building has no solar panels on it because we're not sure what we're going to do with solar, whether it's going to be owned by the town or a third party, a power purchase agreement. So at some point when the Energy Committee and Luigi figures this all out, we're going to have to, there might be another interim funding request, or maybe it'll be part of next year's budget, hopefully, so it's not, something that's hitting you guys blind. And the building is solar ready. We can clip solar panels onto that building in a moment's notice. The conduit is in place to support the panels down through the building and into inverters into the electrical room. So that aspect is in the plans. It's just that the panels themselves are not.
thank you for that additional information. Okay.
I just want to respond to Karen's comments. So I feel like I'm in the
Well,
minority.
normally, we don't respond to each other, but I guess,
Well, not respond, but the point that she's making, which, I feel like I'm a bit in the minority here in kind of stating some of these ideas. So I by no means do I think we should not move forward with this project. I've heard great things about you, Alan. I think this is not any challenge of any professional judgment. I just wanted to make a statement on, I think we could have, unfortunately, just because of just the nature of Q4 and the last few months, and I'm the biggest believer in, you can't predict the market. I understand that. So this is not where I'm coming from. My reason, my hesitation is really on the two numbers. One, that we don't have a professional estimator for, that I would feel more comfortable having somebody that, is our guy telling us what this number should be and not somebody else. And then second, on seeing if we can put our innovative hats on and see if there's a creative solution to understanding some of the constraints that exist with public projects. Is there an opportunity here for us to, put on our hats and think about ways that we can maybe not negotiate again, but maybe index some of these prices, which I really truly believe are out of line by directly the cost, that the increase. And if we can save our town some of that money, I feel like we have a responsibility to do so. So the hesitation is by no means do I think this project should be delayed. I think we should move on track. Maybe you start with a demo, but you figure out some creative way to go back. And I don't know if there's no answer, there's no answer. But that's the spirit from where I'm coming from. I just wanted to make that clear.
so I'll just make a point here, though. When I looked at these numbers and the increase, really, about 2/3 of that increase is really in the earthwork. It's in the earthwork. It's not necessarily in steel or the other commodities. So I think we can't, forget about that. So, ready to take any kind of decisions? Oh, wait a second, we have Mr. Raymer. Mr. Raymer.
Don't talk very loudly.
No, 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 you have to be in a mic.
Push the button.
Okay, I was just going to add that Al's written materials are very clear, but to the listening public that doesn't have Al's written materials, I just want to fill in that Al was referring to, this is the adoption of the low bid at $20,312,000 or $313,000. It also absorbs an ad alternate that each of the bidders had also bid on, and that's the impact glass. And so the $4,040,000 picks up, makes the option to adopt the ad alternate. And so when there's a reference to the $20,312,000 or $313,000, that's not actually quite the complete number. There's another $86,000 or $87,000 in that lowest bid. That's all.
Thank you. Okay. So, do we have any motions? Leslie?
I'm going to make a motion to approve, to recommend approval of the additional appropriation of $4,040,000 for Eastern Granite Civic Center.
You're not going to recommend this time. This is not is this a really, this is an actual increase in an appropriation.
I'm recommending an additional appropriation of $4,040,000 for the Eastern Granite Civic Center. And the
Okay,
recommendation is for the full BET.
Right. And so is there a second? No seconds. Well, I'll second Leslie's motion. Oh,
I was giving Nisha I feel like you always look at me first, so
no, 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 I looked all the way down there. I didn't see a soul.
I'm happy to second.
Okay, so the second is Laura. I was happy to second it too, but, you know. Okay, so we'll take a vote on that. Leslie?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Nisha?
Can I abstain?
Yeah, you can abstain.
All right, I'll abstain for the reasons stated, and just to be clear, I do want this project to go forward, so I don't want all over the news tomorrow that Nisha doesn't want this project.
But I'm going to vote yes on this, and so the vote is 3-0-1. And so we did not discuss whether this would be a routine item. I'm assuming that it is not routine, is that?
I'd say non-routine.
I'd say the size and the issues with it.
Non-routine.
So I think you're expected, I mean, I'm not going to speak for the chair, but I'd be prepared to come back on Tuesday night.
Yeah, that's not a problem.
Okay. So I think we're finished with your part of it, but we now need to vote on the funding of this, and we have we currently bond the other $18 million plus of this, and we have a bonding resolution that is our next item on the agenda, which is FI2, bonding resolution authorizing $4,040,000 on borrowings to finance Eastern Granite Civic Center.
And I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the bonding authorization of $4,040,000.
Okay, so made by Leslie, seconded by Nisha. Laura?
I just have a question for Peter Rowland. Can you just confirm this is normal? Robinson and Cole drafted this and everything is as it should be?
This is the language that we used for the last interim appropriation.
But reviewed
Yes.
by legal counsel? It's all good, standard? Okay, thank you.
And just, for clarification, it's my understanding that any of these interims, Robinson and Cole doesn't charge any additional kind of fees when they charge us the one-time fee when we do the big bond issuance. And I'm looking at Pete. Is
That's
that
correct. They bill us once a year, and it's tied direct, same thing as Bill Lindsay. It's tied directly to the bond issuance in January. And then we appropriate, we put the money in the proper buckets in the month of February when we pay the bill. The Robinson and Cole doesn't charge us anything extra for any bond-related work, like these bond resolutions. The exception is when you go to the financial advisor, Bill Lindsay, if he does debt policy or fund balance policy work, he charges us small amounts of money.
But not for, bonding resolutions. So this is a bargain, Jeff. We're saving money.
I just want to point out that for the newer members of the BET, even though you're passing this bonding resolution and then the RTM votes on it, we will not borrow the money until next January. Yeah.
Till it's needed.
Or February, I mean, because we moved it up a month.
Thank you, Pete, for this additional information. So are there any other questions, or shall I take a vote on this?
Actually, this is a really specific question, and I'm sure I should know the answer to this. We do a ban bond. The language here is about the 5-year bond, or does it also cover the ability to go out for the bans?
Well,
Because in our budget books, we have a separate authorization for the bans, right?
so Roland, we'll turn that question over
No?
to you.
The
No, we
bans aren't
don't.
separate?
It's just,
Okay.
yeah, it's the same. It'll follow, we won't borrow it to February 9th, I think it is. It'll be ban bond.
I just want to make sure we have the authority for both the ban and the bond, but I think if you're saying yes, then yes. We can always
Yeah,
look at
but
that over the next day.
let me
or two.
clarify what I said is, we've already initially borrowed against this project for the short term, based on what we're going to spend. So this technically will be absorbed in the whole 18 plus $4 million project.
Right, so we have one
Yeah,
financing
I mean,
method.
the issue, and we don't have to go into the details. This says it's for $4 million of general obligation bonds. So what we're approving in our packet talks about the up to 5-year bonding program. In our annual budget, we have an additional resolution that identifies how much you're expecting to borrow under the bond anticipation notes, which I guess we will be approving that in March. So it will now, that bond anticipation note amount will be modified to reflect anything you need for this program. So that's when we'll take care of that appropriation.
Roman, correct me if I'm wrong, I think this won't be part of the budget process. This is just, is a standalone resolution.
This is how we've always done it in the past. I'm just thinking of a little hiccup that I'm thinking about now, but I'll take this offline just to make sure I understand
So
that we've got everything in place.
We're doing everything as we've always done it, and this is the funding that would parallel or blend with the existing funding that we already have for the Eastern Greenwich Civic Center. And, if Leslie wants to ask these additional questions, and if we need to at some point refine this, then I think that there would be no question that if it made sense, that at least I would support whatever Pete and Roland, agreed. But this is the way we've been doing it, and it's always good to have more eyes or more thoughts.
So
But,
just so I understand, Leslie, your concern is section 1, I think it's like the 6th line down when it talks about shall be due not later than the 5th year after their date? Is that what you're?
Yes, I mean, this specifically says the general obligation bonds. That's not a ban,
Right.
right?
So maybe somebody could.
The authority for the bans, I just want to, and we've always done it this way, if it's a gap we've had in our prior appropriations, that may be, but I want to make sure you've got the appropriation to go out for the bans that are associated with this particular bond. When we go to our old budget books, we have 2 resolutions in there that are separate, one addressing bans, one addressing bonds. So again, we can take it offline just to
No,
make
but I think it's a good point
sure
that we should
we
check
have
with
the
our council to make
appropriation.
sure we have that, because this is the intent is to do what we normally do,
Correct.
ban, and then 5-year.
Right,
Okay.
and I agree, Laura. I mean, we all agree with the point, and so the intent here on this particular approval of FI2 is to do the traditional ban, 5-year bond, 1-year ban, 5-year bonds that will parallel the financing structure that we have for the existing $18 million plus appropriation for Eastern Greenwich Civic Center. So are we ready to take a vote? I think if you want to amend this, Leslie, to say anything more, but otherwise, we'll just take it as it's presented.
I think it's fine, and I'll clarify in the next day or two, and if it needs to be changed at the full BET, we can take that action at that point.
And then we should think about whether we have to do, I don't think we have, whether we have to do anything for what we've done in the past where we're borrowing bands. Okay, those in favor? So that vote is 4-0-0. So, I've lost my pen. I think this concludes our meeting. But before we conclude, our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, March 10th at 1 p.m. in the afternoon in the Town Hall Meeting Room. And in the interim, we will continue our meetings on the fiscal year 23 budget. And we start again tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock in this room. Again, continuing with our current format, and like the BET next week, I think we'll be returning to, still looking the same here, but the more traditional Town Hall has opened its conference room, so people like Ken Borsak, who is a loyal follower of our meetings, can actually be present if he chooses to. So anyway.
Tarkington, before you close the meeting, I'm going to correct my prior question, and I think Roland and Pete were very polite. I didn't read the title of the bonding authorization. It talks about temporary borrowing for such purpose. The body doesn't refer to the bands, but the title does, so I think we're covered.
Okay, great. Super. So, any motions to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
No, they do it by cash flow.